Welcome to episode number 14. I would love for you, if you have a moment or a half an hour, to review some of the things I said in episode 13, because in some ways this is a continuation. And in case you don't have the chance to listen, I will review some of it. So I kind of sounded like an absolutist in the last video when I said, when we are in oneness, or when we are in God, rather than journeying to the one or to the absolute, there is no need for forgiveness and choosing again and mind training. And that's because I won't say that's because, I feel that I was taking that stance in reaction to people that say, Course in Miracles people, who hold on to forgiveness as though that is the only way to be free. And I would like to talk about it a little bit differently today. When we're in the dream of a separate self, the dream of a personal self, we need tools. We need forgiveness, if that's your thing, if that's your method. We need a realization that we've been judging. That's the same thing. Because when we understand equality, as Dove Fishman teaches us, then even if you don't have a formal practice that one calls forgiveness, just noticing the judgment takes one off the pedestal of being better than or worse than, and we come back to sameness, which could take us back to being in the oneness rather than attempting or journeying to the oneness. So I want to quote something from A Course in Miracles today. So before I get to that, I should apologize for calling it the training wheels, these mind training tools. It sounded kind of condescending, and I want to come off that absolutist place, because we all are moving in between knowing the oneness and believing in the dream. And I'm starting to be taught something new. I keep being taught about the dream at night. When we're asleep, we, the dreamer, are completely into the dream. We don't have methods for stepping out of the dream. Sometimes the dream goes too far, if you will, and we are woken up. I truly believe that we are being lived just like the person in the dream. And when I say I believe it, I know it. There's just the one. I know that in every cell of my being. Do I sometimes act as though I am an actor in a dream and there is a personal self? Yes, you bet. And I don't know anybody that doesn't. every single person, including Rupert Spira, including the Indian gurus that I knew for sure. But that doesn't mean that they aren't awakened. So what does it mean? So let's take, if you will, a metaphor that Rupert Spira often uses, which is there's a man named John Smith. Now, he doesn't always say this, but he sometimes does. And it was a very important thing that I missed previously. So I'm going to fill you in so you're completely in the loop of the metaphor. So John Smith knows who and what he is. John Smith knows that he is awareness with a capital A. John Smith is eternity. John Smith knows he is one with the one. John Smith is fully awakened. And then John Smith takes an acting job and he becomes King Lear. And in the turbulence of the play, in the cacophony, which is my new word, meaning divergent sounds and messages, opposing sounds and messages, if you will, which to me represents that play, King Lear, and it represents life as we know it. So while he's doing the play, he's totally into it. He's doing a fantastic job, which means he's not pretending to be King Lear. He has embodied King Lear. He is King Lear. Now, in Rupert's metaphor, he gets lost in being King Lear. And his friend comes to visit him later. And John Smith is so depressed. And he says, I have so many problems with my children, with my wife, with my life. And his friend says, what are you talking about? You have a great life. What that was King Lear. And he says, no, I have problems. Because in his thinking, feeling, reality, he has perceived problems. And nobody can tell him he's not King Lear. Now, in this world, we'd say he's psychotic and we'd put him in a hospital. But what if that's us? What if that's us? You cannot argue, as I did attempt to last night, talk somebody out of being who they think they are. I learned my lesson. You can give people an experience of something else that I learned. But words don't talk anybody out of these things. So I was going to, before, tell you something from A Course in Miracles, and it's from the teacher's manual, and it's under How is Correction Made? In the blue book, it's page 1372. It says, correction of a lasting nature, and only this is true correction, cannot be made until the teacher of God has ceased to confuse interpretation with fact or illusion with truth. If she argues with his pupil about a magic thought, attacks it, tries to establish its error or demonstrate its falsity, he is but witnessing to its reality. Depression is then inevitable, for he has proved both to the pupil and himself that it is their task to escape what is real. And this can only be impossible. That's really important here. Reality is changeless. Magic thoughts are but illusions. I think I won't go on there because that really resonates with my experience when I tried talking somebody out of the dream last night. I think both he and I got depressed. And then I was moved to just do a meditation. And we went to the oneness. We went to the wind. We went to the ocean. We went outside these perceived bodies. The bodies are real. They're as real as a tree, but they aren't us, or they aren't only us. They're our manifestation in this world, but we've got it confused. So, are we being led? We don't need to get caught in concepts. It's our experience that matters. When we are not in the oneness, whatever it takes to remember the oneness, and we may all do that differently, whatever it takes to wake up to the impersonal. Impersonal is a pretty good word because it feels like it's just a little bit away from the personal. It's actually a completely opposite experience. I've heard it described as benign indifference. Those words don't so much attract me because benign sounds like, the opposite of cancer and has a association with cancer, although we know what it means. But the example of that expression is when you're with a child that you care about and they're making a sandcastle and they're making tunnels and they care deeply about this lasting. You're not involved with the sandcastle because, you're happy they're making it. You might even participate and help them make it and make it look better. But you're not invested in a false reality, the dream that this sandcastle and the tunnels will last. You know that they're temporal, that they are not the truth, which is unchangeable. You know that because you are more mature in your knowing than this child, but you love the child. So you care that they'll be disturbed. And if they happen to be there when the sandcastle washes away, more than likely they'll be upset and you'll care that they're upset, but you keep that, what might be called indifference or neutrality, but it's not indifference. It's just the correct perspective. It's just the knowing that it's just sand, it's temporal, and it's nothing. And that's what we lose sight of when it's us. So I want to speak to whatever skills wake us up. I know that I am having a lived experience of going out in the world in a bigger way. Bigger, there's no bigger and smaller in truth, but bigger in terms of the personal self's personality. Earlier in my life, I was not called, and nor did I prefer to speak publicly or have a business that was anything beyond one-to-one practice. And things are changing. And I knew that I was needing an editor, and I was needing some design work for some projects. And I've never spent money on that. Well, you say that's nothing. That is exactly an example of a personal self. And yet there is the imprint of something larger. The personal self is in the background so far in what I told you. But when I got anxious about what does an editor cost and why am I doing this, and how will I approach this and how many hours, that's all the personal self. So how do I handle that? Well, first of all, when I'm caught in a dream, a forgetting of I am only the host of what is, then I will notice the nervousness or some momentary thought of money and how will I pay this person and what will the cost be. I notice the thought, I notice the feeling. I don't judge the feeling that, oh, I got caught up in it. I notice the contraction. And then I also then remember that I'm being called to do this. That is the bigger movement. And so I know that it will all be taken care of. Now, the next step was that I made an overture to someone who's kind of a virtual assistant and proceeded with a negotiation to hire her. But it didn't feel right. It didn't feel like that intuition that comes from something larger. It wasn't the same not feeling right when I was adjusting to hiring somebody. And I asked somebody who's very wise, Jenny from England, who works with Bill Free. I think if you've listened to her, you will have the impression that she knows of oneness. And I asked her, why did the Indian guru say it feels the same when you're getting a download of get some water, or you're getting a personal message of water? And her answer was, it feels the same when you're still identified with a personal self. And that makes sense. Once you no longer have any identification, and I'm not actually sure that's possible, and to live in the world. And I'll tell you about that in a second. But if that were possible, then it would always be different. It would always seem different when we're getting the message, get the water, because that's where you're supposed to be. And this is from the one, versus a made up story in a dream, get the water. But here's what I conclude. it doesn't matter, because as long as we let all our thoughts and all our feelings go, we notice them. This is not a bypass, but we don't attach to them and add paragraphs. And then we can step outside of the dream right then and right there. Oops, fell back asleep. Oops, I'm awake. It can be that fast. So just bringing you along in my thinking and my feeling and my following intuition, it didn't work out to hire that person, even though she's lovely and there were no issues of disagreement. Turns out she was too busy to take on the work. And then I got the message from her of who she was recommending to be my editor. And I knew, even though it didn't feel lovely and calm and peaceful, when I clicked on some of her links, I went, oh boy, here we go. I've skipped the small levels of hiring a virtual assistant, and I'm into a bigger time leveling, not bigger and smaller in worth, just in it's going to cost more, and she'll be into messaging and far more advanced design work than just cleaning up the videos and doing the work I had first thought of. And there's been on each big step, including being on this radio show and being on YouTube, there's been a deep breath, Rosalind, here we go. And it doesn't matter what the thoughts and feelings are, because I'm not attaching to them. I notice them and I step back out into the oneness. What does that mean? It means a neutrality. It means an impersonality where I no longer care about my feelings. I don't care about the money. I don't care about anything except that I know I will follow. I wonder if that makes sense. Something came today from Rupert Spira that I'd like to read to you. It says, from the viewpoint of the earth, the sun comes and goes, whereas it is in fact always present. Likewise, from the viewpoint of the body and mind, our essential nature of pure awareness comes and goes. But in its own experience of itself, it is ever present. So that means to me that our experience will always be of the dreamer when we're dreaming. And I want to come back to John Smith in the play. Wouldn't he be a better actor if he forgot he was John Smith and fully embraced being King Lear? Would we not all, as the viewers, the audience of King Lear, have a more magnificent experience? All we can know, whether our experience is of a separate self or of the oneness, is that in being with what is, no judgment, no second guessing, no attachment to thoughts and feelings, guess what? Everything we've been longing for is available. Freedom in the now. And I leave you with that today. Thank you so much for joining me.